In 1999, a movie came out that studios were terrified to release. It was violent. It was dark. It was deeply, deliberately uncomfortable. And when it premiered at a film festival, the audience sat in complete silence. The studio thought they had a disaster on their hands. They were wrong. Fight Club became one of the most quoted, most analyzed, and most rewatched films in cinema history. But even if you've seen it 10 times, there are things happening behind the camera that will completely change how you see it. Today, we're going 10 layers deep, from a Hollywood actress who was fired after refusing a rock star's widow, to a phone booth that proves Tyler Durden doesn't exist, to a line of dialogue so offensive, a studio executive accepted it because she was tricked into a deal she couldn't escape. These are 10 weird facts about Fight Club you never knew. Let's get into it. Fact number 1, the tooth job. Let's start with Brad Pitt's face, because it wasn't an accident. When David Fincher cast Pitt as Tyler Durden, he had a clear vision. Tyler needed to look like the kind of guy who'd been in a few too many fights. Attractive, yes, but damaged. Real, not Hollywood polished. Most actors would have used a prosthetic, a dental cap, something reversible. Not Brad Pitt. Pitt walked into his dentist's office and asked him to physically grind down a piece of his real front tooth, not fake it, not simulate it. Actually remove part of his actual tooth, permanently damaging it so the chip would look genuine on camera. The dentist did it, and then, only after production wrapped, Pitt went back and had the tooth fully restored. Think about that for a second. This man voluntarily destroyed part of his own smile for a role. Not because he had to, because he wanted Tyler Durden to be real. That level of commitment was, weirdly, very on brand for the character he was playing. Fact number 2, the Courtney Love firing. Before Helena Bonham Carter ever stepped into the role of Marla Singer, someone else had the job. Courtney Love, widow of Kurt Cobain, lead singer of Hole, one of the most volatile personalities in 1990s rock, had been cast as Marla Singer. And by most accounts, she was perfect for it. Raw, self-destructive, magnetic. Marla Singer in real life, some would say. So what happened? Brad Pitt happened. At the time, Pitt had a personal dream project, a biopic about Kurt Cobain. And to make that film, he needed one crucial thing: the blessing of Cobain's estate, which meant he needed Courtney Love's cooperation. He asked her, she said no. Shortly after that conversation, Courtney Love received a phone call from David Fincher. The role of Marla Singer was no longer hers. Love has been very public about what she believes happened. She claims Pitt orchestrated her firing as retaliation for refusing the Cobain project. Fincher and Pitt have never confirmed it directly, but they've never fully denied it either. And Courtney Love? She has said on multiple occasions that she has never watched Fight Club. Not once. To this day. Fact number 3, the Radiohead rejection. The music of Fight Club is iconic. That grinding, industrial, electronic score by the Dust Brothers hits exactly right for every single scene. But it almost sounded completely different. David Fincher's first choice for the soundtrack wasn't the Dust Brothers. It was Thom Yorke, the lead singer and creative force behind Radiohead. And Fincher didn't just send a casual email. He recruited Brad Pitt and Edward Norton to personally write letters to Yorke, asking him to come on board. Two of the biggest movie stars in the world, handwriting letters to a rock musician, asking for his help, York said no. His reason? He'd just finished the promotional cycle for OK Computer, one of the most critically exhausting and emotionally draining album tours in rock history. York has described that period as a near breakdown. He was, in his own words, too messed up in the head to take on something as intense as Fight Club's soundtrack. And here's the twist. Thom Yorke has since said he regrets it. Every time he watches Fight Club, which he loves, he wonders what his version of that soundtrack would have sounded like. We'll never know. But somewhere in a parallel universe, there's a version of Fight Club scored by Radiohead. And honestly, it probably would have been extraordinary. Fact number 4, the payphone clue. This next one is hidden in plain sight. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. Early in the film, the narrator's apartment explodes. He's standing on the street, homeless, bewildered. He decides to call Tyler Durden. He finds a payphone, dials the number, and Tyler doesn't pick up. But then the payphone rings. The narrator answers it. Tyler is on the line. They talk. Tyler invites him to the bar. The story begins. Except, that's impossible. And the film tells you this, if you're paying attention. As the camera frames the narrator standing by the payphone, it slowly, quietly zooms in on a small sign attached to the booth. The sign reads, "No incoming calls accepted." This is not a background prop placed randomly. This is David Fincher telling you, right there, in that moment, that the phone call cannot be happening. Tyler could not have called back. Tyler does not exist outside the narrator's mind. The entire twist of the film is hidden in a payphone sign in the first act. Fincher has said he always rewards multiple viewings. This is exactly what he meant. Fact number 5, the line they couldn't change. Some of the most memorable lines in cinema history came from fights between directors and studios. This one came from a trap. In the film, after the narrator and Marla sleep together for the first time, Marla says something completely shocking. A line that stops the scene cold. That line almost wasn't in the film at all. The original line, taken directly from Chuck Palahniuk's novel, was, "I want to have your abortion." Fox executive Laura Ziskin heard it and demanded it be cut. It was too much, even for Fight Club. Fincher agreed to change it, but he set one condition. Whatever new line he came up with, Ziskin had to accept it. No further negotiations. Ziskin agreed. She was confident that nothing Fincher wrote could be worse than the abortion line. She was spectacularly wrong. The replacement line, "I haven't been fucked like that since grade school," was so much more disturbing in a completely different way that Ziskin immediately wanted to go back to the original. But the deal was done. She'd agreed in advance to accept whatever he wrote. Fincher held her to it. The line stayed in the film, and it remains one of the most jaw-dropping moments in the movie to this day. Fact number 6, the snowflake origin. If you've spent any time on the internet in the last 15 years, you've heard the word snowflake used as an insult. Fragile, oversensitive, self-important. That word, used in that way, may have started here. In Fight Club, Tyler Durden delivers one of his most cutting speeches directly to the members of Project Mayhem. He says, "You are not a beautiful and unique snowflake. You are the same decaying organic matter as everyone else." Chuck Palahniuk, the author of the original novel, has said in interviews that he believes the political use of the word snowflake as an insult traces directly back to that line. It spread through internet forums in the 2000s, was picked up by political commentators in the early 2010s, and eventually became one of the most commonly used words in modern political discourse. Palahniuk himself has described his feelings about this with a mixture of dark amusement and genuine discomfort. A line written in the mid-1990s for a novel about masculinity and consumerism accidentally shaped the vocabulary of 21st century political culture. Fight Club keeps finding new ways to be relevant. Whether that's a good thing is a whole other conversation. Fact number 7, the birdseed body. Meat Loaf, the rock legend behind Bat Out of Hell, played Bob, the large, emotional, deeply sympathetic character who becomes one of the story's most important figures. To play Bob convincingly, Meat Loaf wore a fat suit, but not a normal fat suit. The suit weighed over 45 kilograms, nearly 100 pounds, and was constructed with a very specific material inside the padding: birdseed. The costume department discovered that birdseed, when packed into the cavities and folds of a foam suit, created a weight and movement that was far more realistic than any synthetic material. When Meat Loaf moved, the suit shifted and swayed exactly the way human body mass actually does, because the thousands of tiny seeds inside redistributed their weight naturally with every step. The suit also included 2 prosthetic breasts, which, during emotional scenes where Bob is hugging the narrator, would press against Edward Norton's face. Norton has described this experience in interviews with a level of specificity that suggests it was not easy to forget. Meat Loaf wore that suit for hours, every day during production. He has said it was the most physically demanding work of his career, and he once sang Bat Out of Hell live for over 2 hours straight. Fact number 8, the Jared Leto winkle. This one requires you to pay very close attention to a single moment. There's a scene where Tyler Durden is addressing the members of Fight Club, delivering one of his signature speeches about modern masculinity and false promises. He says, "We've all been raised to believe that one day we'd all be millionaires, movie gods and rock stars." On the words rock stars, Tyler turns and looks directly at Angel Face. Angel Face is played by Jared Leto. At the time of filming, Jared Leto was quietly in the process of forming a band that would go on to become 30 Seconds to Mars, one of the biggest rock acts of the 2000s. Almost nobody on set knew about it yet. Leto was keeping it extremely quiet. David Fincher knew. Whether the look was scripted, improvised, or quietly suggested by Fincher is unclear. But the timing is not a coincidence. That glance, Tyler Durden looking at the future rock star while talking about rock stars, is one of the most perfectly layered-in jokes in the entire film. Watch it again. You'll never miss it. Fact number 9, the Titanic breath. Here is a fact that connects 2 of the biggest films of 1999 in the most unexpected way. In several scenes throughout Fight Club, you can see the character's breath misting in the cold air, particularly in basement and outdoor sequences. It looks real. It feels real. It adds to the raw, gritty atmosphere of the film. Most of it is digitally created. The visual effects team working on Fight Club was connected to a team that had recently worked on a very different kind of blockbuster, Titanic. During production of Titanic, the VFX artists had spent enormous time creating a digital library of realistic breath elements, the kind of cold air misting you'd see on the freezing North Atlantic Ocean. When Fight Club's effects team needed to create cold breath visuals, they didn't start from scratch. They referenced and built upon elements from that same library. Which means that in certain frames of Fight Club, you may be looking at digital breath that was originally designed for Jack and Rose on the deck of the Titanic. Two of the most iconic films of their era, sharing a breath. Fact number 10, the festival silence. We end where the story almost ended, with complete and total silence. Before Fight Club was released to the public, it was screened at a major festival audience. Critics, industry insiders, press, the kind of crowd that decides whether a film lives or dies before it ever reaches regular viewers. The screening ended, the lights came up, and the audience said nothing. No applause, no reaction. No one turned to their neighbor to say anything. People simply got up and left. The only sounds in the room were coming from the back row, where Brad Pitt and Edward Norton were laughing at their own scenes. The only two people in the building who seemed to be enjoying themselves. The Fox executives in the room were convinced they had a catastrophe. Months of production, tens of millions of dollars, and an audience that couldn't even manage a polite clap. But here's what they didn't understand about Fight Club. It wasn't a film that made you want to applaud. It was a film that hit you somewhere deeper than that and left you stunned, processing, unsettled. The opening weekend brought in $37 million. And over the next 2 decades, Fight Club became one of the most quoted, most studied, most rewatched films ever made, regularly appearing on lists of the greatest movies of the 1990s. The silence wasn't rejection, it was impact. So there you have it. 10 facts about Fight Club that most people have never heard. A chipped tooth that was chipped on purpose. A soundtrack by a band that was never asked. A payphone sign that tells you everything. And a screening that ended in total silence before the film became a legend. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person this channel is made for. Hit subscribe if you want more deep dives like this one. And leave a comment below. Which fact hit you the hardest? We'll see you in the next one. We'll see you in the